You're listening to the Iterators of the Imperium.
Hi, I'm Miss, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Ryan, and you're listening to Season 6 of the Iterators of the Imperium podcast. The podcast in which Ryan is the expert on Warhammer 40k, and I am the noob, trying to learn about the Warhammer universe. And I really want to mention this real quick, you guys, the listeners, if you have any questions for us, you can ask them on Spotify now. Yes, that is a possibility. And of course, if you're watching from YouTube, you can do the same. But yeah, Ryan, Ahriman is waiting. Let's just get into it.
Alright, okay, let's do this, right.
Yeah.
So, we left off last time, end of the kind of fourth section of this, Arhiman having woken up an entire Necron dynasty while trying to find the Key of Infinity, some device that their Pharaon built that allows you to basically control time. For the record, right, a little bit of secret information here I should really give you, right? That Necron Pharaon has no real idea how or what the Key of Infinity, like what it is or how it works. He doesn't really know. He built it. Guy has no fucking idea what the fuck he built. Hey, this guy has like a general idea of what it's supposed to do. Other than that, because he never actually got to use it because obviously he got his whole like dynasty got locked up by the rest of the Necrons because he was building shit like this.
Infinity Stone.
Aye, yeah. If you're gonna build a magic time machine, I'm pretty sure people are gonna lock you up before you get a chance to use that. Because anyone that wants a magic time machine is not someone that should be allowed to have or use a magic time machine. You know what I mean?
I think that's a good point.
Yeah, just like the guy who really wants to have a nuke in his back garden is not a guy you want to have a nuke in his back garden. You know what I mean? So, because he never got to use it or anything like that, he really doesn't know how it works very well. Fun part of this. But, yeah, that whole situation, it kind of just left Ahriman and his whole cabal much worse off, because you had the whole background story to it where Helio Isidorus, now basically just this fire demon, the Pyrodomon, that was just gradually burning through all the Thousand Suns, turning them into rubricae, almost nuked them all because it was able to use Catesius's memories briefly to try and link to all of them. So, all of that aside, things are looking pretty bad for them. I will mention that since Catesius ripped his memories out of its mind, Helio is back to just being this memoryless guy just sitting in a cage. Just so you know. So every time you go to talk to him, he's like, "Who the fuck are you?" And you're like, "I'm this guy." And he's like, "Alright." Then you walk out the room, walk back in, and he's like, "Who the fuck are you?" So Helio's just back to being that. But the Pyrodomon thing that's like slowly burning through the Legion is still going on, but it's like just totally random. It's like misfiring of his memories suddenly coming back. Yeah, so that's the thing. And I'll be honest with you, right? Things get really jumbled in this part, right? But you'll see pretty early on why that is. It's really hard to get like a distinct narrative for this section of Ahriman's storyline. Right? The reason for that is that Ahriman keeps hunting for the Key of Infinity. And he does find it and he does use it. But, as you can imagine, that leads to this weird time travel loop where he keeps repeating the same events over and over and over, trying to get to, like, one finality of it. And because of that, there's a lot of jumping back and forward, and bits getting cut out, and bits getting added in. It's very confusing to try and build an actual narrative out of this. So, bear with me as best you can. I'm gonna do my best here. It's very fucking confusing. And I guess we'll start with the Harlequins, because the Harlequins have been kicking around for a couple parts of this story, trying to orchestrate some kind of fate out of it.
Yeah.
And the most kind of important part of this is that a couple of them go to the Black Library, right? And I don't know if we've ever actually mentioned the Black Library in any real detail. No?
No, it doesn't ring a... Well, no, it does ring a little bit of a bell. Continue.
Okay, I'll just give you a general explanation, right? So the Black Library is it's like an existential concept in a way, but it's also an actual location. It's really weird. I think the idea is that it's buried somewhere deep in the webway, So it's like old ones construction, right? Like the guys that built the fucking Eldar and fought the Necrons. It's like something they made kind of thing, or something that the Eldar made in the early days, right? This is ancient shit buried deep within the warp somewhere. And it's basically a giant library that holds all information that could ever exist ever, including like past, future, present. Like it is outside of the rules of existence.
Yeah, we have talked about that before. But
Yeah, it's a very weird concept to try and explain because it is like simultaneously a library and not a real thing. It is simultaneously a physical location and just a concept. It's very weird, right? It's nigh on impossible to explain. I feel like the only way you could do it would be with like an interpretive dance number, some really weird choreography, like oh god, what are they called? Like aftershave or deodorant, like adverts, how they're all really weird.
yeah,
Yeah.
Old Spice.
Aye, right. Or like the ones that's just like Johnny Depp burying jewels in a desert in black and white for some reason. You're like, I don't know what this has to do with this. That's how you try to explain the Black Library to people, is with one of those kind of adverts that you're just like, I'm more confused than when we started, but okay. It's just a concept. But anyway, regardless of that, the nonsense that is, a bunch of the Harlequins go to the Black Library and get a book that literally just says what's going to happen. It's just a book that has, like, the future written in it. So they know exactly what is going to occur down to the word. So that's a thing, right? That's the background piece to this whole thing. Now we get into the Ahriman nonsense, right? So, Ahriman keeps looking for the key to infinity, finds it, at the same time, Setekh, the Pharaon of the Necrons, he also finds it. They end up there at the same time. But the key of infinity is not like a machine, it's more of like a building kind of thing, like a weird existential labyrinth. There's a lot of weird concepts in here that you don't really have to understand. But think of it like a building you can actually walk through, and then there's one area that if you get to it, you can then use the device, right? So these two both end up in this weird labyrinth at the same time, but the device is not built for more than one user. So it kind of makes a way for it to have two people in it, because it can't figure out how to do that, right? They can't just stand next to each other. So what it does is it kind of puts them into, like, parallel versions of reality. It's like a pocket dimension. It kind of just splits it into two. So the two of them can see each other once in a while, but they can't, like, physically interact with each other. It's weird. But they both use the device at the same time, and what they want overlap with each other in contradictory ways. So it leads to the two of them both, like, running through this same loop of time over and over, while, like, jittering back and forth between what they remember and things like that. That side of it is significantly worse for the Necron. Ahriman doesn't really get as much of, like, the memory kind of bleeding back and forward part of it. But there's a whole extra side to the Necron side of it that we'll get to kind of towards the end. Yeah. And we're going to try and go for a bit of a narrative here, right? So, starting from the earliest point I can think of, right? So Ignis obviously became a Rubricate at the end of last time, and he was Ahriman's right-hand man. So Ahriman needs a new right-hand man, so he takes Caduceus, the demon summoner, right? So Caduceus ends up his right-hand man. And a big part of Caduceus's gimmick is that he's warded all the ships in the fleet and stuff to keep demons out. Big part of it.
Yes.
Yeah. Because he's really good with demons. This is this whole thing. And as a side thing, a cult has also popped up among the crews of Ahriman's ships in worship of Helio Isidorus because he returned from the Rubricate. He became a guy again. So he's kind of became a bit of a messiah for this, like, flame cult. It's quite weird. But now, like, a bunch of the deckhands and stuff are all like, woo, fire god. And so Ahriman gets Mehekta, this pariah that he acquired along the way, to do two things. One is she is the guardian of Helio, because he's just sitting in a cage with no memories. And I think that the reason for this, because you got to think, this is one small woman with no soul on a ship full of the galaxy's most powerful sorcerers, right? And you're like, if anyone's fit to guard something, who is it? Most people would vote sorcerers, but because it's a ship full of the galaxy's most powerful sorcerers, they're the most likely threat. So the woman who can't be harmed by a sorcerer is probably the actual best defense. Yeah. But it turns out she's quite a good spy. Because, again, these pariahs, their whole gimmick, the order she's in, was gathering information. So they are pretty good at being spies. So she is also tasked with looking into this cult that's popped up. And she finds out it's actually being led by a couple of the Thousand Sons. Its Space Marines have started this cult and have, like, indoctrinated half of the crew, like the human crew, into this cult, into this worship of Helio. I think it's called, like, the Thousand Eyes or something like that. It's got some crazy name like that. So, yeah, shit's going down, and as always, there is enemies at every turn. It's just standard for Ahriman's life. He just pisses off everyone he meets. Just it might be like a week down the line, but at some point, everyone he meets is gonna try and murder him. I think the only person that hasn't tried to actively kill him is Cathesius.
Yes.
Yeah. So, where should we start? That is a good question. Yeah, in the process of hunting for the Key of Infinity, Ahriman's fleet is ambushed by the Necrons, right? The Necrons are tracking them through the galaxy, bit by bit. So they kind of just try to run again, and this time they dive into the warp, because the Necrons can't use the warp. Their whole thing was only physical science. They have no souls, they can't do warp shit. So that gets them away from the Necrons, but once they're in the warp, they get attacked by a shitload of giant demons. There is a couple of unique demons in here, like really, really unique demons. One of them's like a big sea monster Leviathan thing, like the Kraken, basically. One of them is this demon that's actually like 3 parts. It's made of a very unique kind of treachery. I can't remember what they're called, but regardless, it's a very unique kind of treachery that these things embody. This like 3-part demon manages to sneak its way onto one of Ahriman's ships. This is an issue. It basically just possesses a crew member. And they manage to escape the ambush otherwise, not noticing that one of the demons has gotten on board. And then the demon gradually makes its way up ship until it's able to get to Ahriman. Once it gets to him, it attacks him, and Ahriman does defeat it. He, like, destroys part or binds part of it as it, like, attacks his mind. It's a weird thing. So the part that's bound, so 1/3 of this, like, weird 3-parted demon ends up as, like, a pearl, which is really, it turns into, like, a glass sphere. It's very strange. I don't know what form demons take when you bind them, so apparently Pokeball is the call. Yeah. So it turns into, like, a glass ball, basically, and Ahriman falls into a coma. Right? So Ahriman's out of the game now, basically, is the gist of this. And Cathesius is left to try and figure out what the fuck to do. Obviously, Ahriman being out of the game leads to a bit of infighting among his people, specifically between Cathesius and this guy called Gormata. Gormata's whole thing is like, Ahriman's out of the game, we need to make a choice. We need to move forward. We can't just, like, do nothing and wait for death, because we're gonna die if we just do nothing, you know? That's our whole gimmick as Thousand Sons. We need to be constantly doing something or we just keel over. Or something comes and kills us. So, and Cathesius basically like, slow your roll, mate. Ahriman's still alive, he's just unconscious. Give him a minute. Right? He'll figure this shit out and then we'll be on the move. Gormata is not happy with this. And being that everyone knows about the cults, Cathesius takes this whole Gormata pushing for this thing as Gormata's the one that, like, is in the fucking cult. Which he is, to be fair. He's leading the cult. He is, like, top dog of the cult. But it turns out there's a bunch of the Space Marines are in the cult, so that's not great. actually, there's a weird part to this. The reason that the cult popped up is because when the Pyrodomon was going to claim the entire Legion, when it was using Ctesias' memories before, right at the last minute, when it, like, stopped, Gormata, obviously, because they can just see fire at the time, Gormata saw this, like, figure in the fire drag him back from, like, the edge of death before it stopped. He thinks this figure is like an embodiment of the Pyrodomon, and that if they can help it, it can, like, find a body, it can become a living thing, and it can then save them rather than destroy them. This is what he made up from his fiery fucking fever dreams. So Gormata's just nuts, is the gist of this. But he's nuts and leading a cult. So, bad combo. Although you very rarely end up leading a cult if you're not nuts. So, it tracks. So, Ctesias goes back to Mehecta to talk about all this, because he knows Mehecta's still on site, right? She's still working for Ahriman. So he goes back to her and is like, what the fuck should we do about Gormata and his, loser band of cultists? Because the problem is, it's basically Mehecta and Ctesias against the world at this point. Because they don't know who's in the cult and who's not, but they do know the cult definitely outnumbers the two of them.
Dude.
So, not great. So, these two just kind of team up to figure out what the hell to do, since, again, two people versus possibly everyone else.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little bit about the Necron side, because the stories kind of start to come together around that point. So, as far as Setek's side of this goes, he has just been kind of, like, randomly having dreams, for lack of a better term. And in these dreams, he's still a Necron, but he's, like, wearing human skin and, like, pretending to eat meat like he thinks he's still alive. And this is a thing with the Necrons. There is, like, a curse that they go through that's basically insanity, where they think they're not a robot. Like, they yeah, it's horrible, because they wear human skin and stuff like that. It's really minging. This is just a thing with the Necrons, though. A small amount of them have, like, basically insanity, but it's like some kind of digital virus. It's really weird, and it can spread from one to the other. But
yeah,
so Setekh kind of, like, wakes up into this and is like, what the fuck is going on? I'm not a living thing, and neither are any of my people, but they're all acting like they think they are. That's not good. And he realizes that he must have used the Key of Infinity at some point. But to end up in this position that he's in, where he's wearing human flesh and stuff like that, something must have went wrong. So he figures Ahriman must have gotten in the way. So he realizes that, well, that means Ahriman found the Key of Infinity, and I can't fucking find it, and they hid it specifically from me, So what if I just follow Ahriman? So that's why the Necrons end up tracking Ahriman through the galaxy, because they're like, he definitely finds it, so if I just find him, I'll find it. And then once we're both there, I just need to beat him inside, basically. Easy, or kill him before he gets there, but, like, just need to get to the right location first, right? As soon as I've found it, we're good. But this does mean he has the rest of us wearing human skin, with a bunch of nutcase Necrons that are all also wearing human skin. But he keeps, like, jittering in and out of, like, his past memories, and being aware of the time travel and everything, and succumbing to the madness. So he'll be walking along and then randomly be like, oh, my skin's itchy. And he's like, wait, I don't fucking have skin. What am I doing? Right? Like, it just keeps hitting him in little blurts once in a while. It's really rare. And also all his, like, Necron dynasty are also like this as well. But they're all, like, totally insane. So they're not coming and going. They're all just like, kind of hungry. Mashes more meat into metal face. Like, they're all totally batshit. So that's fun. He's really got, like, a solid team on side for this.
I don't think fun is the word, Ryan. I'm not gonna lie. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Yeah, it's not great. So yeah, this whole thing just leads to them following Ahriman and, attacking him and all that stuff. So at the point that we ended off there, when the cult is about to do its uprising thing on Ahriman's ships, and it's basically Ctesias and Mahekta against them all, the Necrons launch a kind of stealth attack. And the whole point of this is to plant a bunch of Necron troops inside their fleet and just have them, like, hide. Just wait. But it now means that there's a bunch of Necron robots and shit scattered throughout their ships, just, like, in hiding, waiting for the right moment to, like, you know, ambush. But obviously, they're going to wait till they find the Key of Infinity first, but then it means that they can, like, kill them all off without, you know, having to really do anything. Because they already have people inside. So, yeah. So, Necrons are kind of coasting behind the rest of these guys for a while now, right? Just whatever I'm talking about, assume there's a Necron 5 feet behind them that they don't know about. Alright? That's the gist here, right? There's Necrons everywhere, just not doing anything yet. So while everyone in the fleet is kind of getting fired up for a coup against Ahriman, within his coma, the Harlequin that like read the future from a book in the Black Library just appears in front of Ahriman and is like, "Hey, by the way," and he just like shows a star map of exactly where the fucking Black Library is. He's like, "That's what you're looking for," and Ahriman's like, "Why? Why are you showing me this?" And the Harlequin's just like, the story has to end eventually. There's no point having a long bit in the middle. I may as well just tell you where to go. So, I really feel like this was kind of lazy writing in a way. Like, I totally get it, because that is the kind of thing the Harlequins are known to do. They kind of, like, jumpstart fate a lot of the time. They just want to get the ball rolling. But at the same time, it also feels like the writer couldn't figure out how to, like, get him to find it. So they were like, I'll just have a Harlequin tell him. Because they never come up at any other point in the book. There's a prologue that's the Harlequin reading this information, and then there's a random like one paragraph where a Harlequin gives him this information. They do nothing else in the storyline until the epilogue, and all that is them discussing what happened in the middle. So I don't think they were necessary. I think they were a plot device. But that aside, yeah, they just wanted to like kickstart the whole thing. So now Ahriman knows where it is, but he is in a coma. He does a little like you know, Jedi mind trick onto their navigator to tell him where to go. So he just kind of gets the fleet moving. But Ahriman's still in a coma. You know, that's why he has to Jedi mind trick him rather than just go tell him. But obviously, no one else knows this. So outside of this, the navigator just randomly fires up the warp drives and gets the fleet moving, and Ctesias is like, this is the cult making their move. Like, this is Gormata starting shit now. Because he doesn't know if it's Gormata or Ahriman or just the navigator having a stroke or something. They don't know what the fuck's going on, because no one gave him an order to go, but he's fucking going. But yeah, it was just Ahriman. So, Ctesias gets moving to go like figure out if it was Ahriman or Gormata. Gets ambushed, he gets ambushed as he's like, you know, moving by a sorcerer named Gitacat. It's just one of the cultists. Yeah. He gets ambushed by this guy and a bunch of the Rubricae. So at the very least, he does know that the cult is kicking stuff off now since he's just been attacked by one of them. Ctesias just murders Gitacat, for the record. He just fucks him up. Dead. And it's in killing this guy, that's how he finds out is Gormata that's leading the cult. Like, actually leading it. He didn't realise it until... He knew he was in the cult, he didn't realise he was leading it. And he also figures out that the cult controls most of the ships by this point, right? So, like, there's not a lot they can do from where he's at. Ctesias and Mahekta are kind of limited in options right now. For the record, Mahekta fucked off. Ctesias doesn't know where she went. He just knows she's not following him anymore. She's gone.
Yeah.
So he dealt with this ambush on his own, which would have been significantly easier with the magic nullifier with him, but, you know, whatever. So there's this bit where they're like, what are they gonna do? Because the cult has a few goals here, right? They need to get rid of Ahriman, because if he wakes up, he can kill them all. That's a threat, right? But the other thing is, they're a religious cult that actually has a physical messiah that is a currently living guy in a cage. So they also want to go free Helio Isidorus, right? So they're trying to, like, which one's they gonna do? And it seems like Mehecta goes for Helio, and Catesius goes for Ahriman. That seems like the gist of what happens here. So Gormata and his forces actually do go for Helio first. You need to get the Messiah on side first, apparently. Mehecta actually does ambush Gormata and his guys. She manages to, like, gut a couple of the sorcerers and shred a bunch of the Rubricae. But in the end, Gormata kind of just, like, peppers her with shrapnel and leaves her bleeding out in a hallway. She's just like a normal human, eh? So she's like, if you get hit with shrapnel, you tend to just bleed. So he doesn't even kill her. He like leans down and is like, "Does it hurt? I fucking hope so," and just like leaves her to die, leaves her to bleed out in pain.
Stone cold.
Yeah, he's fucking nuts. It's basically just like, that's what you get for fucking with us, dickhead, and just leaves her like slumped in a corner. But this is
right. She couldn't hear him, right?
Hmm? She couldn't hear him.
No, she was dead, right? Behind there.
She's left to die. She doesn't die quite yet. It's gonna take a little while. She's bleeding out, but she's still, actively bleeding out. She's not dead yet.
I thought it was just talking to the corpse.
No, he's just talking to her as she sits on the floor bleeding out. He's like, "I'm not even gonna fucking end you. I'm gonna leave you to suffer till you die."
And that makes it so much more brutal,
Yeah, it's so bad. What an evil bastard. So this all happens like right outside the cells. They have this thing, I think it's called the Cells of Serenity or something like that. It's these weird magic cells. It's for, magic prisoners. So anyone that turned into a Rubricae because of the Pyrodomon, rather than by the rubric ritual, Ahriman locked in one of these cages because he didn't know what the fuck was going on with them. And, magic cage is a good place for that. So this is where Helio has been kept since he became a guy again. And it's right outside this room that this whole thing happened. So she's left bleeding out outside this, like, prison block, basically. And Gormata goes in and he gets to Helio and they talk a little bit. And the whole thing ends up with Helio saying that he wants to remember what's going on. And Gormata takes his hand. And as he takes his hand, they, like, form a bond, so that Helio can use his memories. So Helio turns back into this all-consuming Pyrodomon fire god thing. And Gormata immediately becomes one of the Rubricae. But it's one of these, like, new fancy ones. But all of the Rubricae now are just a part of Pyrodomon. It, like, claims all of them into this one, like, sentient mind, basically. Led by Helio as, like, the main body of it. But it's like a hive mind now. That Helio controls all of them as this one fire demon split among them all. So his whole thing is he wants to go claim a bunch of the extra ones, like the extra Rubricae, and Ignis is being kept in one of these cells, because he was obviously turned into one of these during the Necron assault. Mm-hmm. So, when they go to get Ignis, mind you, Ignis is always guarded by his battle automaton Credence, his big war robot. So it's sitting next to his cell. When Gormata and Helio go to get Ignis, the robot tries to fight them, and they basically just perforate it a couple of times. They just stab it a few times, and leave it to, like, bleed oil. So it short circuits and shuts down, and it's just left there. And then Mehecta sees Gormata, Helio, and Ignis leaving the cells. So they just fuck off to go do whatever they're gonna do. And once she realizes they're gone, she's like, "They didn't even fucking see me." So she just starts crawling, because, like, she's not sure she can stand because she's bleeding that much. Like, I don't want to stand up and then fall down again, that's a problem. So she just crawls, dragging her bleeding body across the floor. Gets to Credence, activates it again, and has it, like, pick her up. So Credence, like, helps her through the ship. And they leave this bloody trail behind them, because obviously the robot's like leaking oil from its damage. She's bleeding, but also they either avoid fights as best they can, or everyone they come across, either she guts them or Credence guns them down. Because again, battle automaton and a psychic like blank on a ship full of sorcerers. The two of them can handle most things together. The whole thing, because she knew at some point she might have to run away, because like at some point these people might turn against her, since she's literally like a soul opposite of them. Like at some point one of them might go a bit nuts and try to murder her. So she had like a little like, you know, escape ship prepared. So she gets Credence to like help her get towards that.
Yeah.
Now, there is a side storyline with Theseus going on at the same time as all of this. So, for the record, Theseus has an apprentice with him that's just been following around. I think his name's like Leonidas or something like that. Who's just been following around this whole time, for the record. Side thing. Theseus and his apprentice, right? They start heading towards Ahriman's chambers. And they get attacked by some Necrons on the way. Pretty standard stuff. It's in a ship that's now full of Necrons. They deal with that. As they deal with that, they start to feel the effects of the Pyrodomon thing coming back. And this is because Gormata is approaching it. Or no, it's because Gormata has just teamed up with Helio. It's Helio becoming the Pyrodomon again, sorry. That makes them feel this like resurgence of the Pyrodomon in them. So, Theseus' apprentice managed to reach Ahriman, right, in his chambers. And there's a whole bit here where Theseus has figured out something to do with this little, like, pearl that became, like, that the demon became when it knocked Ahriman out into this coma. So, he manages to, like, commune with a demon. Because, obviously, it was bound, and if because this whole thing is being a demon, he manages to call to it, and manages to, like, release the demon and speak to it. A deal was made with this demon, not at the moment that it was bound here, but in the past, right? A deal had already been made with it to get it to come and attack Ahriman. And Theseus manages to, like, find out what that deal was. So, what it was the demon had agreed to take someone's memories and keep them from them in return for a soul. So it gives Theseus the memories, but he now has to uphold the part of the bargain of giving it a soul, right? Rather than the person who had originally bound it. He, like, takes over the deal, but now he's got access to the memories. The memories in question are Ahriman's memories, and it includes Ahriman, like, hiring the demon to steal his own memories of this, right? Yeah, he's playing, like, 8D chess here. Right? But the memories are of Helio Isidorus and what he really is. Because Ahriman's been living through this same time cycle over and over and over. So he knows Helio is the Pyrodomon and that it comes to kill him and all this stuff. But if he remembered that this time, he wouldn't have acted the way he needed to. So he needed to not know about it until this point in time, until Helio had already activated and became the Pyrodomon again. Now he needs the memories back so that he knows how to move forward. So Theseus has to give him the memories back. So he has the demon pearl on hand now. The demon is, like, back in the weird pearl thing. But he now owes it a soul. But he goes in Ahriman's mind, gives him the memories back. They talk for a little bit where Ahriman explains everything that's been happening about, like, the time cycles and everything like that. And why he gave up his memories and stuff. And Ahriman wakes up because he now has part of his mind back. It was a whole thing. It was all choreographed in the long run. So there's a bit goes on here because Ahriman, you know, master plan here is like, look, I need to go through this. Like, I need to go to the Key of Infinity and end the cycle once and for all. This is the final time. I can end it now. The cycle will break this time. It's like, but I can't face Helio. I need you to do that. So he gets Theseus to go deal with Helio and the Pyrodomon. And he's like, but there's two major issues here, right? The first is that the Necrons are now about to launch their actual assault and just start attacking the ships and try to kill Ahriman, because they are at the location of the Key of Infinity right now. They have gotten there. That was a big part of Ahriman getting his memories back at the right time. It was specifically only able to happen once they arrived at this location. But the other, much more major issue is Helio and the Pyrodomon, because they're hunting for Ahriman, right? They want Ahriman, because he's the only real threat. And even if Ahriman escapes physically and goes to the Key of Infinity, the Pyrodomon can just remember him and turn him into ash. Because that's the only thing, memory-based. And it's through all of time and history, because that's how the rubric works. So it can kill him regardless of actually physically catching him. So this is an issue, and there's only really two ways to avoid this. Right? One is that Ahriman needs to no longer be Ahriman. He needs to become a different guy, so that remembering Ahriman as he was doesn't link to him personally anymore. Very weird concept.
Yeah.
The second thing that needs to happen is, because Caduceus is getting left behind to deal with them, to like lead them on a goose chase basically, is Caduceus needs to not know where Ahriman went or what he did, so that they can't get Caduceus' memories and find him from there. Right? Now, Caduceus' whole thing is like fucking around with his memories in his mind, right? That's how he handles the demons. He splits up parts of their names in his mind. So building barriers in his own memories is an easy thing for him to do, right? Ahriman, on the other hand, is quite bad at this. He can build a mind palace and a mind world and all this shit. Not very good at sectioning off parts of it and things like that. So, luckily, Caduceus is whole wheelhouse there, so they can team up for this one, right? Because Ahriman needs to forget that he is Ahriman, basically, for the whole identity change thing. So, he would need a whole new identity to be able to assume. And luckily, Ahriman has one of them in the back pocket. Because do you remember at the start of this whole thing, when he had been exiled and he was just some meek little fake sorcerer who had forgotten who he was, working for some random Chaos Warband? He still has that identity, he still was that guy, he remembers all of that. He was Horkos for a while. So he can just become Horkos again. But the thing is, he had, became that through trauma and repressing his own memories. This time, Caduceus helps him literally just banish all the rest of it behind a doorway. So he just becomes Horkos again while he's, in this part of his mind. Really weird.
It's so smart.
It is, it's genius, and it's very lucky that he at one point had major PTSD.
Yeah. The only one in history to ever say that.
I know, right? So lucky I have PTSD.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's the plan anyway, right? Is that, he's gonna run away and, become Horkos again to avoid the Pyrodomon. And while he's doing that, Caduceus is going to lead the Helio and all that on a wild goose chase through the ship, trying to get his memories, right?
Yeah.
For the record, this has all happened 6 times before, right? We have seen Caduceus being chased down by them as he tries to get to his secret chamber on the ship, repeatedly, and every time it ended differently, just so you know. But this is the last time, so this is the cool one, right? Yeah, to be fair, the first one's quite cool as well. He manages to get inside, releases one of his little bottle demons that's a really weak, shitty demon, but his whole thing is eating memories, so it's just releases it and is take everything, eat my entire, memories, and it's done. And he's just a blank slate after that. So when the Pyrodomon guys all reach him, it's just who the fuck are you? And they're I don't know, but you're Caduceus, and he's am I? They're just fuck. This time's a bit different though. So, they obviously have some stuff they need to do first. Ahriman needs to get off of the ship, because they're not in the right location to get to the Key of Infinity, right? There's a whole weird concept behind it. So, Ahriman and Caduceus kind of split up and start heading through the ship in different ways, right? One is going to be to go and delete his own memories, the other one is to get the fuck off the ship.
Yeah.
Um, so, as they're kind of heading through the ship, they, briefly end up fighting with some of the Necrons and stuff. That moves on. Then a bunch of the Pyrodomon crew turn up. So it's Gormata and a couple of his guys rock up and start attacking them. And they kind of lose this fight a little bit, right? They're kind of getting fucked up by them. But Ahriman still has the little, weird Necron charm, so he can, dither time back a couple of seconds at a time. So they keep doing it over and over, but it's not going to let them escape or survive being murdered by Gormata and his people. But what it does do, though, is allow someone else to get to this location. So out of nowhere, in the middle of them fighting the same bit of the fight over and over, Credence and Mehecta just fly in from a side corridor, and Credence just starts gunning guns down. Just starts, lasering people and peppering them with bullets and nuking people and everything. Just starts gunning down anyone in sight. He's not actually carrying Mehecta. Mehecta's on the ground while he does the fighting, because he just physically gets involved. Because when I think of this robot, I think of, it being strapped with guns. And it is, but it's also, a heavily augmented battle servitor. So it's also able to physically fight. So it's, right in the middle of all, the Rubricae and Gormata, punching them and caving in their armor while it, guns down 6 other ones and, nukes people and shit. It's all over the place. This robot is fucking going for it. It's giving its life to take down these fuckers. Gormata does end up caving it in with a flaming, flail. You know, the spike ball on a chain? He does end up, caving his head in with that, with, a flailing mace. But it does buy time for everyone else to run the fuck away, and Ahriman, grabs Mehecta and is like, come on, bail! Because he knows that she had, a secret ship to escape with, and that's where he's going. He needs to get off of this ship to get to the Key of Infinity, so he goes with her. I would say that, I guess we'll go with Catesius' storyline first, because if we go with the Ahriman bit, we'll have to jump back to the Catesius bit and then back to Ahriman. I think if we do Catesius first from this point, we can just stick to Ahriman after that permanently. Less jumping around. So, yeah. We'll do Catesius. We'll try and get a nice clean run for the end of this with just following Ahriman. So, Catesius and his apprentice charge on from that fight, because this is the point where they split off, and they're heading for Catesius' sanctum. His apprentice gets claimed by the Pyrodomon. He briefly has to fight it. This is as they're getting closer and closer to his sanctum. So this is the point that we've seen before, where they're bearing down on him and almost kill him, and he just gets away in time. So he, releases a shitload of tiny, shitty demons into the hallway. I think he describes it as he picked up their names like a child fills their pockets with rocks at the beach.
What?
They're just, they're nothing demons that he just claimed along the way randomly in case he ever needed them, right? They're nothing. But he just, unleashes, 1,000 of them into the hallway to just get in their way, basically, as he keeps running. And they manage to deal with him pretty well, and Gormata and his apprentice and stuff are all bearing down on him. And right at this moment where he's I'm gonna fucking die before I manage to deal with my memories of Ahriman, before I hold up my side of this bargain. And then he's like, wait, I've got an idea. So he takes out the little pearl that is this crazy demon, this threefold demon that attacked Ahriman, and he's just like, you want a soul? Fucking take theirs. Just yeets the pearl down the hallway, and this demon comes out, and then the other 2 parts of it just fade into existence around it. And these are not chump demons, these are powerful, unique demons, and they just start taking on the Rubricae for him. It's yeah, fucking have them. I'm fucking done with these arseholes. Fuck, try to save the Rubricae. Fucking eat them for all I care. It's just great the way he does it. It's fuck this, boom, take that. So he does get into his sanctum. He does release the weird memory demon, and he does have his mind blanked. I think this time he's able to do it, just of the Ahriman stuff. So he still knows the Rubricae are a threat, and I think he basically gets back into the fight, but you never really see him again for the rest of this. So I think he's just kind of becomes a Rubricae or is claimed by the Pyrodomon or something. The other side of this, we'll go to the Ahriman side, and I think we can basically just clean run to the end here, which will be quite nice. As they are, like, setting up their ship, Ahriman does this thing where he takes on the role of Harkos and doesn't remember who the fuck Mehekta is or what's going on. The one thing he knows is that he's trying to get to this one location. He has one job to do, and it's basically get out in the middle of space and then yeet himself out of the ship so he just falls through the void. That's how he's going to get into the key. It's the one goal he's aware of. Otherwise, he's just back to being meek little Harkos, right? Doesn't know where he is or what's going on, but he knows I've got to get out there and yeet myself into the void. That's it. This is when Setekh and a bunch of the Necrons turn up to kill Ahriman before he gets to the key. Right? This was Setech's whole plan. I'll just follow him, wait till he's about to get there, murder him before he does, and then it's all mine. Gets there, is vaguely bewildered by why Ahriman is pretending to be someone else, and then kind of just decides to murder him. This is briefly stopped by the fact that he goes almost completely insane at this point, because again, all of his people are still wearing skin, and so is he. He has another one of these, like, flashes of insanity, and all of his people start, like, screeching in pain, even though they're not in pain because they're robots and stuff. Everyone freaks the fuck out. It's like the insanity is taking more of a hold on him, and as it does, it affects them more too. It's weird. But it leads to this whole horrible situation with a bunch of screeching robots wearing human skin. And Mehekta and Ahriman use this as a distraction and basically just yeet their ship into the void with them inside it, just leaving Setekh on this, like, Ahriman's ship, just like, the fuck is happening? Interestingly, Setekh realizes that, like, he can disconnect himself from the rest of the Necrons so he doesn't have to deal with it. So he does this, but in doing so, they now think he's an enemy. So he starts getting attacked by all his own people. And after murdering a bunch of them, just yeets himself into the void. And as a little side thing, because Ahriman's now out of the ship, Setech's out of the ship, but the ships are all still being attacked by the Necron, and they're still full of Necron. To deal with this, Helio goes to the navigator and is like, tapping on his, like, glass tank that he floats in, and is like, hey, put us into the warp. Alright, so the whole fleet just, like, disappears into the warp, full of Necrons, which have no idea what is going on. They're very confused by this, because they don't have souls or anything. So he gets the fleet away from the Necron fleet, and then Helio uses the amplified powers of the Pyrodomon, because now they're in the warp, it's just pure magic, to nuke the Necrons out of their ships.
See?
Gonna tell you now, none of that matters because of the Ahriman side of this. Right? Not gonna dick around with the weird concepts of this again. Ahriman and Setekh both get into the Key of Infinity at the same time again. Right? Once inside, Ahriman is able to just become Ahriman again and throw off the whole Harkos thing. Because the Key of Infinity is kind of outside of time and space. Right? So he can't be burned by the Pyrodomon once he's inside, because he wasn't beforehand, and now he's outside of time. It's weird, right? But now he can just be Ahriman again. There's no threat to that part of it anymore, so he's like, cool, me again, whatever. And as he walks through the place, again, he and Setekh keep seeing each other, but can't physically interact with each other. And eventually, like, gets Setekh, and is like, look, mate, I want to talk to you. We've got some talking to do, right? This is the point where he explains to Setekh that Setekh has no idea how his own fucking machine works, right? He has no fucking clue how it works. And rather than, like, because they've done this cycle shitloads of times now, right? Nigh on endless number of times. And rather than using that to redo everything like Setekh has been doing, Ahriman has been spending time in the machine trying to figure out how it works. And he's learned some shit about that. And it's kinda enough that he can win now, basically. One of the things it can do is it can literally let you see the future. It can let you see what will happen at some point, which it was not designed to do. But Ahriman shows Setekh what will happen if his goal is allowed to succeed. So if Ahriman was never part of this and Setekh just got a hold of this, what would happen? And it's basically every living thing in existence marching in lockstep, right? Nothing is allowed to move from this, like, designed course he's given it. And nothing is allowed to die because he just uses the power of this machine to hold everything in that last moment before it dies. So
Yeah.
nothing ever changes. Everything just stays exactly as is. And Seteth's like bewildered by this, like, no, this isn't right. This isn't what I do with it. And he's like, but it is, because you're insane. You've been carrying that virus for God knows how long, since before we woke you up. You know, you had this when you went into stasis. There was some lingering part of his memory from when he was human just, like, stuck in him. And when he reawoke his entire dynasty, it spread the disease to all of them. So the reason they all think they're still alive and are wearing human skin and that is because he is insane, and he's made them all insane. But because he thinks he's alive and he can't get over this, he can't accept actual death of anything. So with the power to control all of time and space, basically, this is what would happen. He would end up trying to choreograph the galaxy in this moment before death, because he can't accept death. You know? So he kind of has a mental breakdown and kind of just gives up, because he's like, yeah, there's no way I can win this now, because I'm nuts. So Ahriman's allowed to use the machine now without Setekh getting in the way. So just Ahriman's goals take shape now. So now it's not like creating a cycle of the two of them battling each other to get control. Now it's just Ahriman doing what he wanted to do with it in the first place. And he gets to, like, walk backwards through time where he sees all these major events. So he sees, like, himself waking up the Necron dynasty by accident. He sees them, you know, gaining Mehecta from her stasis that she was in. He sees, you know, the, like, waking up or finding Helio Isidorus and all that stuff. And then he gets to the point that he was planning on going to, which is during the second rubric, when he's, like, in the middle of this ritual, surrounded by all his brothers, linked to them in, like, soul as well as through the ritual and all that, when he's consumed by this big pillar of fire in the middle of it all. And he takes a moment and he, like, thinks, like, well, I could go to that, like, moment of hope when I first found out that Helio had returned and just do this all again, just so I could feel hope one more time. And he thinks about all of that. He thinks about, like, doing that and just telling Helio that he's, you know, he is this, like, fire demon and all this stuff. But in the end, he takes on this, he goes back to this position of when he was at the heart of this ritual again. And it's this moment where, like, he's, you know, at the center of this ritual, power blazing through him, surrounded by his brothers, both the living and the dead ones, because they're all linked through the ritual, waiting for Kaneku to come and, like, steal his spot at the heart of it all. But in this moment, he's like, can I stop Kaneku from, you know, taking over? And he's like, oh, probably not. No, I don't really have the ability to do that, because I'm stuck here. You know, I can't physically stop him. But he takes this moment of, like, you know, knowing what's going to happen before it happens to do one thing. And he calls out to, like, you know, his link to all his brothers. And he calls out to Helio Isidorus. And when that soul responds, that little, like, spark of life responds, he obliterates it. That's what he uses the power of the rubric to do. To just obliterate the spark of Helio Isidorus. Just delete. Gone. And then the same shit that would have happened anyway happens. There is a moment after, like, in there where he's, like, deleted Helio Isidorus' soul, that he goes and, like, destroys his own memories of everything after this point. So he will... the idea is that if he knows that he can go and perpetuate this cycle, if things ever don't work out the way he wants them to, he'll just go back to the Key of Infinity and just do it again, right? Yeah. And he doesn't want that. He wants to just live a normal life trying to move forward without this shit ever happening, without his own folly, and give them a real chance, without having to just always revert back to going to the Key of Infinity and trying again to make it better, right? So he has to, like, forget that. So he deletes his own memories of everything that happened after this point, of, you know, Helio coming back, of finding the Necron, of the Key of Infinity ever existing. And we kind of kick off from this point again, like we did at the end of that ritual the first time, where everyone kind of departs from this point, you know, beaten and bruised, the ritual having failed, Kaneko having died in the process, all of this stuff. And Ahriman goes back into seclusion for, like, days on end. And Ctesias goes and talks to him and is like, look, you need to talk to people, you need to tell them what to do. And Ahriman is like, yep, I'm going to gather everyone together and we're going to talk about it and figure out what we want to do as a group. And that's a weird one for Ahriman, because usually Ahriman's like, I'm in charge, I'll decide what we do. This time he's like, I'll take a group consensus. And as they go to leave Ahriman's chambers to gather everyone up, Gormata finds them and is like, something weird going on with one of the Rubricae, by the way. So this is the same thing that happened before, right? And they go to the hangar deck where they keep all the Rubricae, and it's exactly the same. There's a big gap, a big circle has been made around this one in the center. And the helmet of this one is lying on the ground next to it. And they go over, and this time, rather than it being, you know, Helio Isidorus brought back to life, it's an empty suit of armor. It's not a Rubricae. And there's no, like, mark of magic or, like, imprint of a soul ever being on this armor. And none of them can remember who was in it. Or, like, what, like, why, how it ended up here and like that. So, Helio Isidorus never existed now. They just deleted his existence through all of time and space. Yeah.
Yes.
And that means that the whole Pyrodomon thing is not going to happen, right? The whole thing was the ritual latched onto him. There's no him to latch onto. It's not going to happen now. They're just going to move forward having failed in the ritual. But more of their brothers are not going to die. So Ignis is back as a guy again. And Gormata is not starting a cult or anything like that. None of that shit's going on this time, you know? It's just them against the world trying to fix themselves again.
Yeah.
But now with, like, a different driving force, a different direction. And Ahriman goes on to gather all those people and discuss what their next move should be now that the ritual failed. And shortly after, in the aftermath of all of this, Ahriman basically hires a bunch of renegades to go find something for him. This is him getting Mehecta back. And he doesn't know why, but he feels like he remembers her, but he doesn't actually remember her. It's weird, right? But he gets Mehecta back and hires her again, and it's because he needs to find a location that she will be able to help him find, because, you know, their whole thing is they have loads of secret information. She agrees to help, and the location he needs to find is the Black Library. So that's the goal of the exiles moving forward, is they're going to try and find the Black Library because it has all information in existence. So if there's something in there that tells you how to fix the fucking rubric to begin with, it's going to be there. You know what I mean? So that's Ahriman's goal moving forward. Now, I should say, this is kind of the point where the fleshed out version of this story kind of ends. There is a pretty vague version of it that's been posted in, like, in the, you know, the game manuals, like the books for actually playing the game. They have a lot of, like, the newest lore is always going to be in them, but it's in a much more vague, less detailed sense than the novels and stuff do. So I can tell you that Ahriman and his people do go hunting for the Black Library, and along the way they find out about the Ynnari, this new kind of Eldar that are in, I think they're in service to, like, the god of, like, life and death. So they have the ability of rebirth. They're the ones that help bring back Guilliman. You know? So he ends up quite obsessed with them for a while, and ends up hunting them for a bit as well, because he thinks their power could bring back his people. For the record, they actually can. There is a point where Ahriman and his people find the Ynnari while they're, like, travelling through the webway to go help with the Guilliman thing. And because they can't be bothered fighting them, Yvrain, the leader of the Ynnari, brings a bunch of his Rubricae back to life just as normal guys, and then yeets them off a bridge. It's like, that's a solid distraction. Deal with that, Ahriman, you prick. And then just moves on with her life. It's like a footnote in one of the books. It's just like suddenly, like, 6 of them are just real people again. And everyone's like, what the fuck? And then she's just like, yeet! Just wipes them off her bridge and leaves them to fall. And Armin's like, I better go after them, I guess. That'd be awkward. Finally came back to life after like 10,000 years and immediately fall to your death. So, there is some stuff that goes on after this. But it's not fleshed out particularly well. It's a lot of little bits that you can piece together, but there's no, like, clear narrative to it. Or clear endpoint to it. So I think we'll do, like, updates as information is released, but it'll probably be, you know, big distances in the middle. But for the time being, I can safely say we have covered the vast majority of the story of Ahriman.
But
Yeah, there are little... Oh yeah, we've been through a lot here. There are little, like, footnote mini-stories along the way and stuff like that, but, like... None of them are ever particularly very substantial. We did 2 of them right at the beginning of this about Catesius, because he kind of becomes important as things go on. He becomes more and more relevant of a character, so I was like, I should really give you an idea about who the fuck Catesius really is and what he does and stuff. But the rest of them, a lot of them add up to being very, like, zero-sum. They're entertaining, but they don't add a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. But, weirdly short season. I don't know why. When we started this, I was like, 14, 15 episodes, easy. And we're on, like, 11 and we're done. These last 2 parts, there's just not a lot you can really go into with them, I think. Although, to be fair, this episode is longer than we have been doing recently, but I think that's good for a finale, you know? I don't think you want to cut a finale in half too much, you know?
Nah, I don't. Nah.
Yeah. So, what, next episode is going to be season 7?
I reckon.
Yeah.
If we don't, you know, put some stuff out in the meantime.
Oh, we'll have some nonsense in the middle, don't worry.
But
Yeah,
okay,
season...
you gotta find that. Some nonsense in the middle. Then wait, no, what? Listen.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Just claim English is not your first language. No one can question you.
Yeah, no, I've done that. Sounds true.
Yeah. Yeah. If you ever say something wrong and someone's like, that sounds weird, but English isn't my first language, and if you question me, you're racist.
You know English.
No one can argue with you at that point. I know you're lying, but I don't want to be racist.
Well,
The threat alone is enough. Do you remember what we're going to be doing for season 7?
have you planned that fully?
Oh yes. Oh yes, we have. We also announced it.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I've had a brain fart. I'm also.
It was like, I think it was the start of this season, like right at the beginning. We talked about what we were gonna do in this season and the next.
Right. I remember like a water bottle with a hole in the bottom. Like.
That's fair. That's fair. You're gonna like the next season, because next season. So obviously this time we're focusing on a character, right? And I wanted to do a couple where we focused on characters, storylines. But next time we're going to be focusing on a loyalist character storyline, so you can see things from, you know, the non-chaos side of it a little bit. And we're going to do Dante, the leader of the Blood Angels. So, you know, sanguinious-y stuff.
Hey.
Yeah,
yeah, now it's come back to me.
Yeah, he's a really cool character, and he's got a really good storyline. And the good thing is, it's very, like, start to end, and he's involved in a lot of major events. So, like...
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, it covers a lot of good shit. It's good.
Alright.
I'm excited.
Well, Ryan, could you do me a favor and, like, add some fireworks, like, now? Some effects.
Just comes up in bold black, just the word fireworks. I'm like, I could figure it in.
It did fireworks here.
Just like a footnote with an asterisk around it, like, add fireworks.
Yeah. Hey, the budget for this. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want me to round it out for the last season here? Or do you want to round it out?
Oh, no. That's your thing. I like your endings.
Well, It's been me, Miss, and Ryan. Thank you guys so much for listening to this, not just episode, but this season of the Iterators of the Imperium podcast. We will all see you later in season. I gotta find out what the Latin word for 7 is, though. But whatever it is, we'll have to wait. Take care, guys, and peace.
Bye.